All right, welcome everyone. Today we are tackling what is honestly a shared, almost universal trauma for language learners. Look, if you have ever studied German, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's the seemingly arbitrary nature of German noun genders and those endless, grueling vocabulary lists that come with them. You stare at a word, and you literally just have to guess whether it's a masculine der, a feminine die, or a neuter das. It can feel incredibly overwhelming. Well, in today's explainer, let's see if we can completely flip the script and change how we look at the German language together. You know the drill. You've probably been told countless times by teachers or by textbooks that genders in German are just completely random. The traditional advice is always that it requires brute force memorization. You just have to learn the article with the noun every single time, flipping through hundreds of flashcards. But what if I told you there are actually hidden patterns? What if there's a systematic logic operating right beneath the surface that can save you literally hundreds of hours of study time? So, here is our game plan for the explainer today. First, cracking the masculine code. Second, finding the feminine patterns. And finally, navigating the neuter nouns. Let's jump right in with section 1, cracking the masculine code and uncovering the structural secrets of the der patterns. What's really fascinating about the masculine gender is how elegantly these nouns can be grouped. We're talking about both real-world categories and specific word endings. Instead of viewing every single noun as this isolated island you have to memorize, we can actually start to see entire continents of meaning. And that breaks things down into incredibly digestible chunks. Let's look at the absolute gold standard for categorical rules. If you're talking about days, months, seasons, or compass points, things like der Montag for Monday, der Winter for winter, or der Norden for north, you are in completely safe territory. These are always masculine, with literally no common exceptions. Think about how powerful that shortcut is. You learn the days of the week, boom, that's 7 nouns you automatically know the gender of. The months, that's 12 more. It is a fantastic, reliable rule to have in your back pocket. Okay, here's another incredibly useful real-world category. Most alcoholic and plant-based drinks are masculine. If you're ordering der Wein, der Kaffee, or der Tee, you use der. They all follow the rule perfectly. But language always has a sense of humor. Our fun, quirky exception here is the famously neuter das Bier. Just remember that beer stands in a league of its own in Germany, and naturally it stands in a league of its own grammatically too. Now let's talk about structure. Roles or tools ending in are usually masculine. So if a word describes an agent doing something, like der Lehrer, the teacher, or a tool doing a job, like der Computer, or der Fahrer, the driver, it's almost certainly masculine. Of course, you do have to watch out for exceptions. Treat words like das Fenster, die Mutter, or die Butter as memorable VIPs that break the mold. But honestly, memorizing 3 exceptions is a whole lot easier than memorizing 1,000 words individually, right? All right, moving right along to our next section, finding the feminine patterns and mastering the die rules. Identifying feminine nouns actually relies on a slightly different strategy. While masculine nouns lean heavily into those real-world categories we just talked about, the feminine D is heavily reliant on recognizing some very, very consistent suffixes. It's almost mathematical once you see it. So here's the golden rule. If you spot a word ending in ung, tät, or ion, like die Zeitung, die Universität, or die Nation, you can bet with near absolute certainty that it is feminine. And what makes this an absolute game changer for English speakers is that a lot of those words ending in tät or ion are international words. Think about die Realität, die Region, die Situation. You can see how quickly you can expand your vocabulary with complete 100% confidence in your grammar. Right on the heels of that, words ending in like die Natur, die Kultur, or die Temperatur, are also almost all feminine. This ending acts like a massive neon sign just pointing you straight toward the feminine gender. The main outlier you'll actually run into here is the academic term des Abitur, the German high school exit exam. That one acts as a rare exception just to keep you on your toes. Okay, I absolutely love this statistic. Did you know that roughly 90% of German nouns ending in the letter E are feminine? Just think for a second about how many everyday objects end in E. Die Blume, the flower. Die Lampe, the lamp. Die Katze, the cat. This is arguably the single most valuable rule you can learn as a beginner. The sheer beauty of this 90% rule is that it totally takes the pressure off. You don't need to be perfect. You just rely on that massive 90% success rate. When you see a word ending in E, just assume it's feminine. Then all you have to do is simply memorize the handful of 10% exceptions. Things like der Junge, the boy, der Name, the name, or das Auge, the eye. By doing this, you are actively shrinking the amount of work your brain has to do. Finally, let's tackle Section 3, navigating the notoriously tricky neuter nouns, the das code. Now, neuter patterns definitely have their own distinct flavor. They're deeply influenced by Latin-style endings, and they also rely heavily on a very specific, incredibly common German prefix. Let's break those down. So nouns ending in uum or ium, like das Museum, das Zentrum, or das Stadium, are almost universally neuter. This gives you another incredibly reliable cheat code. Because these are often loan words from Latin, they retain this specific, almost clinical feel in the language. If it sounds a bit academic or a bit scientific, and it ends in uum, slap a das on it, and you're going to be right almost every single time. And look at that! Our magic 90% rule strikes again. Except this time, it's at the beginning of the word instead of the end. A huge, massive majority of nouns starting with the prefix ge falls squarely into the neuter category. This prefix is absolutely everywhere in German, often used to turn verbs into nouns or to describe a whole collection of things. Because of this rule, you can confidently guess das for words like das Gebäude, the building, das Geschenk, the gift, or das Gespräch, the conversation. The rule is incredibly robust. You just need to treat the outliers, like der Geschmack, die Geschichte, or der Gedanke, as fun trivia. Yes, they break the rule, but they are in the vast, vast minority. All right, let's wrap up our explainer and talk about your new language toolkit. So, what does this all mean for you? Well, by understanding the patterns we've covered today, you can literally shift your entire approach. You can move away from overwhelming, tedious rote memorization to empowering, confident pattern recognition. You aren't just memorizing randomly anymore. You're a detective now, looking for the clues at the ends and sometimes the beginnings of words. You are categorizing the world exactly the way the language itself categorizes it. And that doesn't just save you time. It builds your confidence, allowing you to speak so much more fluidly without constantly second-guessing yourself. I'm going to leave you with a challenge to take into your next study session. Which pattern surprised you the most today? Was it the alcoholic drinks? Was it that amazing 90% E rule? Or maybe the Latin endings? Whichever one it was, I want you to see if you can actively spot it the next time you encounter a German text. Challenge yourself to find these patterns in the wild. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into German nouns, and happy learning.